I'm telling you, the hardline power players strutting around like they own the place don't seem to grasp the storm they've unleashed, and now the chaos is boomeranging straight back at them as alliances shatter in real time. Donald Trump is openly rattling his own party, issuing threats and ultimatums, and instead of falling in line, members of his own ranks are firing back just as fiercely. Every time he pushes one Republican out of the spotlight, another one steps forward to distance themselves, to criticize him, to quietly, or not so quietly, look for ways to stall, block, or outright dismantle his plans. The defections are happening so fast it feels like a political whiplash, and Trump's reaction has been anything but subtle, spiraling into late-night tirades on Truth Social, blasting out furious posts that read more like personal vendettas than strategy. And trust me, we'll get to those explosive messages in just a moment. If you're following this unraveling saga, make sure you stay locked in and subscribe, because this collapse is unfolding day by day. The latest shockwave? A Republican who abruptly dropped out of the Minnesota gubernatorial race, then went on CNN and said the quiet part out loud, delivering remarks that made it crystal clear. The party that once rallied behind Trump is now fracturing, and the cracks are impossible to hide.
You talked about, at the end of the day, I have to look my daughters in the eye and tell them I believe I did what was right. I'm a parent, so many people watching are. But tell me about why it was so important for your daughters to see you do this, Chris.
When I look at my daughters, I want them, like every other parent, I want them to have a better life than I did. But I also want them to know that I'm leading by example. And when I want them to know that it doesn't matter what the color of your skin is. It doesn't matter where you came from. We need to treat everybody with a measure of humanity. And that's what it really means to be an American. That's what we are. We are a nation of immigrants. And when we're treating United States citizens for they're hiding in their homes right now in Minnesota, they're afraid to go outside. We have United States citizens, because of their color of their skin, are carrying papers, their passport with them, pictures of their passport, because they're afraid of being picked up by the federal government. That is antithetical to everything our country is about, literally everything. And I want my daughters to know that I stood up and said no. It's far important to me that I said no to this than I become the Republican gubernatorial candidate, and see my name in lights with respect to that. There are some things that are far more important than just running for office, and I needed them to know that.
What Chris Madell said on CNN didn't sound like it came from someone loyal to the Republican Party. It sounded like a desperate warning siren, the kind you'd expect from the opposition, practically pleading with the country to snap awake. And that tells you everything about the mood inside the party right now. It's not confidence, it's panic. They can feel the ground shifting beneath them. They know standing shoulder to shoulder with Donald Trump isn't the political shield it once was, and it's starting to look like an anchor. What's even more revealing is who's speaking out. Not the usual cable news regulars, not the career political insiders. It's the self-proclaimed apolitical crowd, the business owners, the community leaders, the I don't follow Washington types, suddenly stepping into the spotlight because of the backlash over U.S. immigration and customs enforcement operations. That's when you know something has broken through the noise. When the people who claim they hate politics start talking politics, the temperature has changed. The tipping point came after the deadly federal immigration operation in Minneapolis, where agents fatally shot U.S. citizens, including a 37-year-old ICU nurse. The images and video rippled across the country, igniting protests and fierce condemnation of the federal presence. Watching it unfold felt less like shock and more like déjà vu, the kind that turns your stomach because you've seen this movie before. It echoed the era of George W. Bush, when aggressive federal tactics eroded public trust for years. History has a way of repeating itself when power goes unchecked. Imagine waking up to armed agents lining your neighborhood streets, sirens, flashing lights, helicopters overhead. What's your first thought? Safety or fear? That question is hanging in the air across communities far beyond Minnesota. For years, Trump treated immigration like his political ace card. He boasted it carried him through 2024 and would glide him into the midterms. But this time, the calculation looks off. Instead of energizing supporters, the issue is fueling backlash and giving the Democratic Party an opening to push a more measured, humane alternative, one that feels steadier to voters exhausted by chaos. And here's where it gets really intriguing. Even Greg Abbott is stepping carefully. Abbott has publicly urged ICE to recalibrate its mission after the Minnesota tragedy, a rare moment of daylight between Republican leadership and Trump's hardline posture. When allies start adjusting their tone, internal conversations have shifted. All of it paints a picture of a party wrestling with its own reflection. Trump fires warnings at dissenters. Dissenters fire back, and somewhere in the middle, voters are watching and recalculating.
Greg Abbott says ICE needs to recalibrate mission after deadly Minnesota shooting.
It takes a lot.
No, you shouldn't.
It takes
And
a lot
thank God
to
you're not a police
unite
officer.
the NRA and Greg Abbott and other major conservative forces in this country against the Trump administration and the way they're doing immigration enforcement. The First Amendment, the Second Amendment, and the Fourth Amendment have all been violated by the way that they are carrying this out. And people saw it clear as day, and that's why they responded this way. And the president, who I think most of the time has better instincts than Stephen Miller or Kristi Noem, could see this for what it was and knows that there has to be a change in course.
What's unfolding inside the Republican Party isn't just infighting, it's open warfare. And right in the blast radius stands Donald Trump, watching allies peel away one by one. The cracks aren't subtle anymore. When figures like Greg Abbott start adjusting their tone, when even longtime conservative institutions like the National Rifle Association aren't sounding as thunderous as before, you can practically hear the panic setting in. That panic has a target, and lately, it's Thomas Massie. Nothing screams desperation louder than that blistering late-night tirade Trump unleashed after Massie pushed for the release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. The 79-year-old president didn't just criticize him. He detonated a 300-word rant, branding Massie totally ineffective, urging loyalists to rally behind Captain Ed Gowan, and insisting voters back home are itching to throw Massie out. It wasn't strategy, it was fury. A strong man losing his grip, swinging wildly at his own ranks because outrage is the only weapon left in reach. And Massie isn't the only tremor. The leaked audio involving Ted Cruz was like a political earthquake. Cruz bluntly warned Trump about looming losses. The House slipping away, the Senate tilting, impeachment threats piling up. Trump's raw, unfiltered response, "F you, Ted," didn't project control. It revealed someone boxed in, lashing out at the messenger because the message feels too real. When your own party leaders are forecasting defeat out loud, the illusion of dominance fades fast. This is what late-stage power struggles look like. Allies hedging, critics emboldened, insiders whispering about the next chapter. Republicans can sense the momentum shifting. Democrats can feel the opening widening. And Trump? He doesn't pivot, he escalates. But escalation without leverage only accelerates the spiral. The looming midterms now feel less like a routine election cycle and more like a reckoning. Control of the Senate could redefine everything. The House matters absolutely, but the upper chamber is the real prize. That's where candidates like Peggy Flanagan come into focus, steady and strategically placed. And rising progressive voices, figures like Abdul, aren't just running against Trump. They're pitching a forward-looking alternative, something tangible beyond outrage. An affirmative vision can be far more powerful than endless reaction. Meanwhile, backlash over U.S. immigration and customs enforcement operations has shifted the mood in ways few predicted. Issues once thought to be political gold are suddenly volatile. Voters appear restless, less interested in bombast, and more interested in stability. Put it all together, and the picture is dramatic. Trump firing off furious posts, Republicans bracing for turbulence, Democrats sensing opportunity, the GOP looks fractured. The opposition smells momentum. And the next chapter isn't just about who shouts the loudest. It's about who can convince voters they have a future worth choosing.
Yeah, I'm not really surprised that President Trump is sending Tom Homan in because ICE, DHS, Kristi Noem have been a political disaster. Because just take a look here. I mean, ICE's net approval rating during Trump's term, you go back to term number one, look, it's pretty even at 0 points. You go to June 2025, right? That was when all that stuff was going on in Los Angeles. They dropped down, look at this, minus 17 points, way in the basement. But then after Minneapolis, it's even lower, minus 27 points on the net approval rating of ICE. Of course, this all being done under Kristi Noem. So, no, what's going on in Minneapolis is not popular at all. What's been going on during this second term under ICE, under the Trump administration, under Kristi Noem, has very much not been popular, and it's only been getting more and more unpopular.
What about DHS kind of more broadly?
Yeah, okay. So, we're going to start down low. We'll start with ICE and then we'll raise it to DHS. And again, it's just the same exact story, right? DHS is doing an excellent or good job, the Department of Homeland Security. During Trump's first term, look where it was in late 2017, right about at this point. 59%. That's pretty gosh darn good. But look at where it is now in Trump term number 2. By late last year, it was down to 42%. So this is the same story that we're seeing no matter which poll question we look at. The popularity of ICE, of DHS, has completely fallen under the second Trump term, the second Trump administration, where what we were seeing during Trump's term number 1 was, hey, ICE, DHS, pretty popular, certainly not unpopular, but all the actions in Minneapolis, in Los Angeles, in these major American cities have been very much rejected by the American people. It has been a political disaster for the second Trump administration.
And now, as Berman was just reading what the president was just sending out, he's now sending in Tom Homan, his border czar, into Minnesota, which leads to questions of what about the leadership of the Secretary of Homeland Security, who has inserted herself very publicly to be kind of front and center in all of these operations.
Yeah, as I said at the top, I just think there's a real reason for it. And that's because Kristi Noem, simply put, Kate, has not been popular, and everything she's done for the most part has not been popular. Just look at her net approval rating. In July of 2025, it was minus 11 points. It's actually gotten more unpopular now at minus 16 points. I looked at every single poll that has been conducted on Kristi Noem's popularity. Every single one, the net approval rating has been negative. ICE is negative. DHS is negative. As I said at the top, Kate, this has been an absolute political disaster for the President of the United States. It's not much of a surprise to me if he wants to push Noem to the side, Kate.
No, and remember, this is one of the things, broadly speaking, about immigration, and his crackdown of it was something he ran on and won on when it came to the last election. So what a shift in changes has been. Let's see what else the president says today. Harry, these numbers really tell a story today. Thank you.
Thank you.
For years, Donald Trump treated the border like his political superpower. He boasted that it powered him through 2024. He insisted it would glide him straight through the midterms. In his mind, it wasn't just an issue. It was the master key to every election. And now, it's the fuse burning straight toward the foundation of his own presidency. What was supposed to be his shield has turned into his most dangerous liability. The border crackdown, the spectacle, the relentless focus on U.S. immigration and customs enforcement raids, all of it was designed to project dominance. Instead, it's exposing fractures everywhere. Inside the administration, the exits are getting crowded. Greg Gianforte is already out of the picture, and whispers are swirling about who's next. Allies who once defended every move are suddenly quiet, calculating, distancing themselves just enough to survive what's coming. The entire machine Trump built, fueled by fear, sharpened by hardline enforcement, amplified by outrage, is sputtering. Not because the opposition found a magic strategy, because the public mood shifted, because the spectacle stopped looking strong and started looking reckless. And once voters begin to recoil, politicians notice fast. They always do. This is what makes it so devastating for Trump. The very issue he believed guaranteed loyalty is now accelerating defections. The message that once unified his base is now dividing his coalition. You can almost see the realization dawning inside his circle. This isn't a temporary storm. It's structural. And if you want the clearest breakdown of just how deep this problem runs, Ari Melber laid it out with clinical precision. The border wasn't just a policy gamble that misfired. It became the first domino. And once it tipped, everything else started wobbling. Messaging credibility, party unity, electoral confidence, the illusion of control. Trump built his brand on the promise that the border fight would make him untouchable. Instead, it's becoming the story that defines his unraveling.
And you might say, well, what does valid ICE enforcement have to do with local authority over elections? And the answer is nothing. Nothing valid here. Sometimes we tell you stories that have two or more sides. This isn't one of those stories. And there is no precedent for the federal government offering to use or withhold armed federal agents in order to get voter rolls. So a judge is now reviewing this sort of electoral angle from Trump's DOJ to assess the Minnesota objection that Bondi is trying to pull off a shakedown, a ransom. You'll notice the common theme here. We are at a point where it takes Republicans in public, after whatever they tried to say in private or meekly to Trump's aides and officials, and he is gettable by phone, he is that kind of president. People reach him more than some other ones. Whatever they said in private didn't work. So you have Republicans in public saying shooting Americans is bad. You have the Wall Street Journal saying shooting Americans is bad. You have now the Trump administration saying, hey, we're trying to work with walls, we're pulling these other people back. But they have yet to even verbally get to the point to agree shooting Americans is bad, acknowledging that, and perhaps some baseline empathy for this family and the other family and all the other people scared in Minnesota, which would still only be a first step to saying, if you acknowledge it is bad to kill Americans, whether or not it rises to the level of a crime, then what do you do to prevent that from continuing to happen?
This is where the Donald Trump era has landed. Turbulence, infighting, and a White House that feels more reactive than commanding. The storm he thrived on creating now swirls back toward him, and the Republican Party looks less like a united front and more like a coalition bracing for impact. The fractures aren't subtle anymore. They're loud, public, impossible to spin away. But beyond the spectacle, beyond the fiery posts and cable news clashes, there's something more serious at stake. When power is stretched too far, it's not just politicians who feel it, it's families budgeting for prescriptions, it's workers juggling rent and groceries, it's parents wondering whether the country their kids inherit will feel steady or strained. Political drama makes headlines. Policy consequences shape lives. That's why moments like this matter. They pull the curtain back. They remind people that democracy isn't decorative, it's participatory. Accountability isn't optional, it's essential. When leaders act as though the rules don't apply to them, the backlash doesn't just land in polls, it ripples through trust, institutions, and daily life. The controversy surrounding aggressive enforcement tactics from agencies like U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement have intensified that debate. For some, it's about security. For others, it's about overreach. But the larger conversation is about limits, about how power should be exercised and who it ultimately serves. Watching a presidency wobble can feel dramatic, even cinematic. But the real takeaway isn't the spectacle, it's the lesson. Systems are bigger than any one figure. Public pressure matters. When people speak up about leadership standards, about policy impacts, about the kind of tone they want set at the top, it shifts the trajectory. The story now isn't only about decline or division, it's about what follows. What kind of country emerges from turbulence? What kind of leadership restores steadiness instead of amplifying chaos? Those questions outlast any one administration. The point isn't just witnessing a fall, it's deciding what rises next and making sure it reflects stability, accountability, and a government that actually works for the people living under it.